All right,
Morning.
looks like we have everyone, so very good.
Just about 8 o'clock. Okay, that's 8 o'clock. Good morning, everyone. I'll call the meeting to order. Thanks all for joining. Had a short agenda this morning, so I thought it'd be best if we did this virtually. So I call the meeting to order. And is there any? I'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Great, thank you. Agenda is approved. So we have the renewal of the contract for Davenport for financial advisory services. Sally, you're going to run through that for us?
Yes, good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Pull up the presentation here. Okay, so the first item on the agenda is to establish an agreement with Davenport and Company for our financial advisory services contract. Okay, so our current contract with Davenport will expire May 14th, 2025. Oops, little delay with the remote here. So I'll just back up. Staff is recommending that Loudon Water, that Loudon Water establishes an agreement with Davenport and Company for financial advisory services under the same terms and conditions competitively negotiated by Montgomery County, Virginia. This agreement would extend the contract through May 31st, 2028. There are 4 optional 1-year renewals available on this contract. I cannot get back to the prior slide. There we go. Okay, so the highlights of the contract that were negotiated with Montgomery County are no annual retainer fee. Expiration again, like I said, May 31st, 2028. The hourly rates are listed for projects. Debt issuance would be agreed upon prior to the transaction, and special projects fees could be determined on a task basis and negotiated ahead of time. Loudon Water has a long history and working relationship with Davenport and Company. In addition, Davenport's knowledge of the County of Loudon and its financial activities prove beneficial to Loudon Water as we plan for the future. Can I answer any questions?
Sally, it's Sean. Excuse me, are the hourly rates, have they increased?
They actually decreased a little.
Increased, okay.
The level, I think it was VP and associate VP might have just gone down a little. It's like they rounded them off. I think they were increasing by the CIP. So we were at like 278 or something. And they actually made them even, so.
And this comes up every time we renew their contract. We renewal based on Montgomery County's rates. Can you explain why that is versus Loudon County or Fairfax County?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know why we use Montgomery. Brian's popping in.
Yeah, they have a contract that has a rider clause on it. And so we don't have to competitively bid if we find a contract in the state of Virginia that has a rider clause. And so Montgomery County's happens to have one. And so we've been using them to ride for years.
Yeah, that's just come up before.
Yeah.
Sally, Mr. Yudd has a question.
I think my question is for Brian, but along the lines of what was just mentioned about procurement and the ability to ride onto a contract of another entity or jurisdiction. Is it possible to get an overview at some point on our procurement process?
Sure.
That, I had a bit of a question during our last board meeting about how we handled some particular contracts. It might be helpful to understand if there's another contract that another jurisdiction or entity has, how we could write it and what type of evaluation is necessary. But I obviously am totally supportive of working with Davenport. We see so much good work from them. And they, I think they provide an awful lot of assistance through the year to us. So, so one request for some overview of procurement at some point in the future.
Mhm.
And then Chair Kelly, I'm willing to move the motion if you're ready for a motion.
I'm ready unless there's any other questions from the committee members.
I think
Looks
there's a
like,
question.
Tony has raised his hand.
Okay.
Morning, Tony.
Mr. Buffington, thank you.
Sorry about that. I was trying to find the unmute button. I just wanted to chime in to say that as a new member, if that training with Mr. Yudd is set up as a side meeting, then I would be happy to join. I don't know if that would be something that might be just a side meeting for him since he was the only requester, or if that might be something that might come to a future meeting just for the whole board or a subcommittee, the finance committee. So however that is, I would just like to be included so I can also learn. Thank you.
Good question, Tony. I think, Brian, I think it might be something, it was a good suggestion. Might be worthwhile to bring it to the full committee at some point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We'll plan for something for later in the summer, fall timeframe.
It'd be,
Yeah.
it'd be a great update, I think, for everyone to hear.
Yep, we'll make sure that happens.
Okay.
Oh.
All right, Charles, if you want to make the motion.
Roger that. I move the recommendation of the board. I move the recommendation to the board to approve contract award to Davenport and Company for financial advisory services for the period of May 15th, 2025 through May 31st, 2028, under the terms and conditions competitively negotiated by Montgomery County, Virginia.
I'll second.
Second.
Right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. We'll put this on consent for the board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. This quarterly review is as of March 31st. Why does it do that? Go back. Okay. So our total portfolio as of the end of March was 439 million. You can see the breakout there. Treasury notes were 182 million, followed by our liquidity at 101, then our federal agencies 91 million, and corporate bonds 55. Okay, our trends for the last 3 quarters, average yield on our portfolio has gone up to 3.75. The key rates are listed at the bottom there. So 30-year tax exempt AAA borrowing rates did creep up to 4.3%. And our LGIP, I point that out too, that was, well, that's on this slide too, 4.53% for the quarter ended. So for this last quarter, we had maturities of 60 million and we ended up purchasing 107 million. So that was a lot of the extra cash we had at year end that we got invested. We invested it at 60 million in US Treasuries, 40 million in corporate bonds, a little bit in agencies, and a little bit in municipals. Our investment strategy for the quarter ending coming up in June 30th is to closely monitor our interest rate trends to determine maturities of investment purchases, target all approved types of investments, as well as maintain liquid investments to meet immediate needs. Just to point out, we have had some very large check runs, so I'm keeping an eye on cash so that we have that available to pay. We also have an additional availability oversizing payment that will be due maybe at the end of Q2. So that's going to be about 15 million. So I'm monitoring that to ensure we have the resources to pay that liquid at least. May I answer any questions that you have?
Charles?
Mr. Yudd has a question.
No, I'm going to have a question. Sally, thank you for the update. Can you explain how do the decisions amongst the allocation, like the portfolio allocation, who decides that? Is
That
this
is
something
me.
we decide or we weigh in on, or how do you all get guidance to distribute amounts across certain portfolio categories?
So in our statement of policy, the board has directed basically Brian, who has designated me to make those decisions. So we have allocation targets. And so I try to keep our portfolio in line with those allocation targets that the board has set up.
Okay, and the
I
targets,
competitive-
what?
I-
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I was going to say I competitively seek bids. So if I'm looking to buy a treasury, I will send out to 5 of our brokers that, hey, I'm looking to buy 10 million in US treasuries. They send me back their best offers. I pick the best offer, and then we purchase it.
If I just may add, yes, in the statement of policy, there is a section that specifically talks about investments, and it has limits on percentage-wise on certain types of investments, such as your corporate bonds and your municipals. And then within your within your agencies, like your federal farm credit and your federal home loans, it has percentages on how much of those subcategories we can have. But for US Treasuries, there is no limit on how much, because that's backed by the full faith and credit of the US government. And so we're allowed to invest in that in as much as we want. But yes, your investment policy is in there, and it sets percentage limits on how much we can purchase of certain types of investments.
Okay, Brian, thank you. Do you think at some point those policies and the authority that you have to make decisions within those policies, does that need review from time to time?
We can. A lot of it comes from the Code of Virginia and how in what the authorities themselves are allowed to invest in. In the past, the committee has weighed in. I believe Mr. Kelly will remember, and we are allowed to purchase commercial paper, but the committee in the past has directed us to get away from that because those are not backed. Those can be a little riskier. So there are certain things that we are allowed to invest in, but through discussion with the committee, we've been advised not to. So we can review the Code of Virginia and see what is in there, and if there's anything that varies significantly from our policy, and make any recommendations to the board or the committee based on that. We can certainly do that.
I think that's helpful. From what I'm gathering, the direction of the policies and then the authority of the Code of Virginia doesn't really give a whole lot of room for someone to go and make wildly independent judgment on investment. But it might not hurt, given that Davenport has, last time they were in, they told us all about their market volatility observations. So anyway, thank you for the information. My questions are answered.
You're welcome.
Mr. Buffington and then Mr. Kelly have questions.
Thank you for this presentation, Sally, and then your input, Brian. You guys are amazing. It just seems from my perspective, it's always Sally. And so and that's great. I love seeing Sally, and you do an amazing job. My question, just again, as a new member and trying to better understand our organization, is, I guess, on the lines, the thought track of continuity of operations. Should anything happen to you, Sally, obviously we hope nothing ever does, and that you're always available for us. But I'm just wondering, kind of, how deep is our bench? Does anyone else know what you know? Can they make decisions like you can in your absence? Just that sort of thing.
Currently, I'm backed up by Brian. So Brian trained me, so we have a backup there. Donna Kovalyak is our accounting manager. So she currently books all the investments and she would be the next in line to, she used to do it years and years ago before I came. So yeah, we have 3 available right now that can jump in and do that.
Okay, that's a great answer. Thank you very much.
Mr. Kelly?
Thank you, Joel. To continue with Mr. Yudd's theme, get in the weeds a little bit. So within those categories, I think it'd be, first of all, I think it'd be worthwhile for the finance committee just to, as part of one of our future meetings, have on the agenda just what the investment policy is and strategy,
Okay.
just so the members can be educated in that. But going through those categories, like with U.S. Treasury, is it 2-year Treasury? I think these are all short term, if I recall correctly. Corporate bonds, and what's the maturity on those, and how is that determined, or is that all set by Virginia code?
Yeah, so we're only allowed to go out 5 years is the max that we're allowed to invest the money.
Okay.
We try to kind of ladder our maturities so they match with projected cash flow. So we look at when the CIP is done for the year, they project monthly how much money they're going to spend. And so then we project to make sure we have enough money available that month to meet that projection. And so, as you know, we have a lot of short-term investments at the moment. We have a lot of cash projected to go out the door in the next few years, and quite honestly, short-term rates are better than the longer-term ones. So that's the plan at the moment, but certainly subject to change based on what we're seeing. But yes, we can plan an item to walk through the investment policy in the future as well.
Okay. No, you've
I
always
could-
done a great job.
I could add that if it's agreeable to the board to the next quarterly review, I can just add a slide here on our policy and
Okay.
what we're following.
Let's do that. So that's a good idea. But you've always, over the years that I've been on the board, you've always done a terrific job of managing it, perfectly. You always have the cash available when it's needed, and avoiding, situations where you're kind of out of the money, so to speak, when you need it. So that's
I would
great.
also refer you all to the investment portfolio. It's in your packet, and on the last page of that portfolio, you'll see the maturity dates. So you can see what Brian was talking about, how we have maturities every month, mostly, where we try to match our cash flow to what we need.
Perfect. Okay, any other questions? Committee? Okay, we'll go into the next update, Sally.
Okay, well, just please note that March is still draft. We are still in audit. The auditors do have the first draft of our ACFR, so we are getting there with our final numbers. But as of March, operating revenues totaled $30.4 million, which is above the forecast of $28.8 million. Non-operating revenues totaled $42.8 million, which is above the forecast of $10.8 million. And as a reminder, $28 million of that difference was due to the data center connections that were expected in 2024 that rolled into 2025. And then scrolling down to expenses. Operating and non-operating Operating and non-operating expenses of $37.4 million are below forecast by $6 million. Okay, so there's a breakout there, and we'll slowly get to the next page here. Capital contributions for the month totaled 33.5, well, year to date, which resulted from 33 million in availability charges and a little bit in drawing fees. And then through March, we had 2,044 new equivalent residential connections. So if I adjust that out for the January data center connections that I have, we would still be slightly above the line, but it would be a lot. I was going to show you here on the chart. It would be slightly above this 500. So we'd be at like 500 something here. So it would be, once I adjust that at mid-year review, it'll look a lot better. And then we have our charts with our trends. My apologies for the delay. Okay, so you can see most of the 72% of the connections are data centers, followed by multifamily. And then on the final page, we'll look at our capital spending plan. So getting there, 25 million has been spent through March. Of the 25.3 million, 4 million was funded by user rates and 21.3 million was funded by the availability charges. Are there any questions on March financials?
Any questions from the committee? Okay. I think that concludes the agenda, Sally. Unless there's
That was
anything else.
it.
Anything else from the committee members or Brian? You wanna? Okay, then I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second. This is Brent.
Okay, Brent. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. we
Thank
are
you,
concluded.
guys.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Thanks. Have a
Thank
great
you.
day.
Have a great
23
day.
minutes.
Yeah, how about that?
Thanks, everyone. See you
Thank you, Joe.
tomorrow. Bye now.